See, Balaam told Balak if he could get Israel to marry the women of Moab and take up their culture, God's hand of protection would be lifted off of Israel. See, God can't bless people that rebel against him. He doesn't actually send the judgment, but what happens is God, through his mercy, tries to get us to come back and keep his commandments so he can continuously bless us. And he gives us a long time. But when that doesn't work, God has no other way to get our attention than to lift his hand off of us because of our sin. Now, God is even merciful in this. You can find that in the story of Job, where Satan and God were talking, and God said, yeah, he's got some sin, that Job. You could do this and this, but you can't go any further than that. See, even when God takes his hand off of us for a season, he limits the ability of Satan. And there's more of God's mercy. So when judgment may come, it comes because we have abandoned God, and he's trying to get our attention. Now, the Israelites, after coming into Moab, began to commit fornication with the women of Moab. They eat meat sacrificed to idols, and they bow down and worship the false gods of the Moabites. In order to put a stop to these sins and stay the hand of God's judgment upon the entire camp of Israel, Moses was instructed to slay every Israelite who had joined himself to Baal Peor. Because of their sins, 24,000 Israelites perished. Well, what caused the Israelites to depart from the one true and living God who delivered them out of Egypt, and they began serving false gods and following the idolatrous ways of the Moabites? The answer is given in Deuteronomy 31:16. I'll let you look that up for yourself. As previously seen, Balaam could not curse Israel. Balaam's prophecies filled with blessings flowed from his lips when he was called unto Moab by Balak. But Balaam did succeed in leading Israel astray through his counsel. The Israelites, through the counsel of Balaam, were led to commit fornication, eat things sacrificed to idols, and bow down before other gods, the gods of the Moabite women. And because of these sins, the judgment of God fell upon his people. Or may I say, he lifted his hand off of God's people for a while to get their attention, to get them to come back to him. See, the counsel of Balaam, or the doctrine of Balaam, had to do with the sins committed by the Israelites in view of their covenant relationship with God. See, briefly stated, this doctrine had to do with the fact that the Israelites were the covenant people of God. This covenant could not be broken. And consequently, the Israelites thought they could sin with immunity because of the covenant with Abraham could not be broken. However, such was not the case for Israel. They could not sin with immunity. It was not true that the covenant established between God and Israel it is true that the covenant established between God and Israel could not be broken, but it was also true that Israel's position as firstborn could not be changed, but it was not true that Israel could sin with immunity. God's wrath was manifest because of the sins of his people, and thousands of Israelites who succumbed to the counsel of Balaam were overthrown in the wilderness, short of their goal, short of their calling. America has a great calling, and we don't want to fall short of that calling. See, today's churchgoer may reason that they can conduct their lives in any manner which they choose, and it will make no difference, and they can sin with immunity. That was not true in the past, nor is it true today.